Well, sometimes it's always good to have long winning streaks and make a run in the playoffs. And if you can have long winning streaks, you can make the playoffs and you can intimidate your opponents. Sometimes that works and sometimes that doesn't. As in football, the Patriots had won 17 straight regular season, well, 16 straight regular season games and two playoff games to go to 18-0 and looking to win 19 straight. But oh boy, they lost to the Giants in the Super Bowl, pissing me off like no other. I cannot watch Super Bowl 42. I just can't. In baseball, the 1912 New York Giants once won 26 straight games, but they didn't even make the postseason. Or was it? No, that can't be right. 1912. The New York Giants holding the record, and they didn't win a championship. For basketball, the LA Lakers had a long winning streak, but did they win the title? No, it was the Milwaukee Bucks who ended up winning the title. But in hockey, sometimes it's good to have a winning streak. When you win 17 straight games, you're expected to be the leader of the pack and win the Stanley Cup. Maybe that's a good thing, maybe it's a bad thing. But anyway, this is a story of the 1992-93 Pittsburgh Penguins.
Hello out there, we're on the air. It's Cutter with NHL time. Tensions blow, the whistle blown, and the pucks go down the ice. Some teams just want to win the cup and do it with a smile. Hey, that is cool. Up on the River Nile. Oh, the good old hockey game. Who will come out on top? Will a team get through the cup by any means necessary? Oh, the good old hockey game. It's the best game you can name, and I'm have no shame. I will simulate those hockey games. Woo!
So the Pittsburgh Penguins organization was one of those teams that came in the Great Expansion of 67 with six teams to join the original six. Of course, the nautical original six doesn't really matter because the original teams were the original three. But let's not be nitpicking over names. When Pittsburgh got their NHL franchise in 1967, they called themselves the Penguins, which was weird because, the Penguins were really? Well, you want an Arctic creature. They even trained penguins, an actual live penguin, to skate on the ice. Well, that was bad. But people forget that Pittsburgh actually had an NHL team prior to 1967. In the 1920s, they had the team called the Pittsburgh Pirates. Yes, the same name as the baseball team. But Pittsburgh actually was decent. They played at the Duquesne Gardens, which was a pretty decent arena, and they got some playoff stuff. Lionel Conacher was playing for that team. Roy Shrimp Walters. Pittsburgh looked good. And then they decided to move to Philly to become the Philadelphia Quakers. Unfortunately, that team sucked so badly. 4 wins in 48 games. They were just disastrous, and that team folded. So Pittsburgh had to wait over 3 decades for a new team. The AHL team, the Hornets, were famous, and the Senior Pro Hornets. In fact, when Pittsburgh started to struggle, people said that they should have been the Hornets or practically just get rid of the NHL players and put the Hornets in instead. I mean, come on, that's bad towards Andy Bathgate. Anyway, Pittsburgh suffered through the first 15 plus years of their franchise with more chances to be relocated than any other city. Four. Like they had bankruptcy up the yin yang. They were like close to the Golden Seals for insolvency and all that. Pittsburgh nearly had to move. Pittsburgh nearly was folded. They had a couple of owners bankrupt them. Pittsburgh looked bad and all that. People thought the city would see better days. But in 1984, the Pittsburgh Penguins shocked everyone by winning the number 1 draft pick and taking Mario Lemieux. Now, unfortunately, 1983-84 Penguins will always be remembered as the guy who basically decided to use Vincent Tremblay, a minor leaguer, in the nets for Pittsburgh instead of Danny Heron. And the tanking job was complete. Pittsburgh just, tanked. New Jersey kind of tanked too, trying to get the number 1 pick. It was a turtle derby, but the Penguins out tanked the Devils. Don't feel too bad for the Devils. I mean, Kirk Muller was a pretty good number 2 pick. Mario Lemieux would refuse to wear the Penguins jersey when he was presented in the first ever televised entry draft. The first few rounds would be broadcast by CBC. Mario Lemieux refused to put the jersey on, and that's kind of pathetic. Nevertheless, Mario Lemieux wanted more money. Him and his agent were playing hardball at work. Let's not forget that Mario Lemieux actually in that 83-84 draft year played in the Memorial Cup where it was held. Where else? Kitchener. That's right, as part of the Laval Voisin, the Quebec League champions. But Laval shit the bed, especially against Kitchener. Nevertheless, Mario Lemieux refused to wear a jersey. But Mario would come in. And in his first shift, he beat Ray Bork on a shot attempt and then scored. And it was like amazing. In his first NHL shift, he scored his first NHL goal. Greater things would come. Mario would be the great enemy of Wayne Gretzky and all that. Lemieux was the first player to win the Hart Trophy other than Gretzky when Gretzky had the streak of winning the MVP. Who broke it? Mario Lemieux. Who broke Gretzky's Art Ross trophies for most points in a season? Well, yeah, Ross name Mario Lemieux. So the Pittsburgh Penguins were good, but unfortunately they just couldn't make the playoffs for the life of them because they just had bad luck. 91, they made a massive move, one of the biggest trade deadline deals of all time, as they got Ron Francis, who was the heart and soul of the Whalers, alongside Ulf Samuelsson and Grant Jennings, for the one of Sarli Solapsky, John Cullen, and I forget, Barry Pedersen, I think, went to the Whalers. Regardless of that, the Penguins had the pieces. And in 91, even though they were third in the division and had to face the Devils in the first round, all the pieces were good. Lemieux was there. Yager, as a rookie, was pretty good. Kevin Stevens, Mark Recchi, when he was with the Penguins, good guys. The Penguins would win the 91 Stanley Cup thanks to their comeback in the first round against the Devils. They were down 3-2. Didn't have Tom Barrasso. He was hurt. So Frank Pietrangelo, of all people, had to come in. And he made that massive stop off of Peter Stastny in Game 7 in New Jersey that stole the series. Pittsburgh would shock Boston in the conference final, go on to face those Cinderella Minnesota North Stars, and actually struggle. They were down 2-1 to the North Stars. And Lemieux, with so much back pain, he couldn't tie his own skates. He had to have a trainer tie his skates for him. Nevertheless, Lemieux played his ass off and got 47 points that year to win Conn Smythe for Player of MVP. 92, they did great. They made a massive move, trading Recchi to the Flyers for the one of Ken Raggett and Shell Samuelson, among others. So the Penguins made a big move. They needed a goalie. They needed a backup goalie, and Frank Pietrangelo was not the answer. So they traded Pietrangelo to the Whalers. Nevertheless, Pittsburgh shocked everyone by making the final. They were down 2-1 to the New York Rangers. They actually won the last 3 games, including that Ron Francis slapshot goal, which I talked about when I talked about the Rangers in the what if of 92. Penguins would sweep the Bruins in the conference finals and sweep the Blackhawks in the Stanley Cup finals, which was shocking. 11 straight wins, a new NHL record for most consecutive wins in a playoff year. Soon to be tied by the Habitants of 93. And the Blackhawks themselves in 92 won 11 great games before the Penguins. Pittsburgh after 93 would be okay and all that, but just not over the hump. Can't get over the hump. Lemieux would have to retire because of his injuries. Yager had to take the team on his back. Pittsburgh made some moves. Lemieux was the team owner, and Pittsburgh soon was going to move the team out. But Lemieux decided to strap on the skates to help his struggling team, and it was weird that an owner would go back on the ice. So he did. In the 2000-2001 season, Pittsburgh had long odds. They shocked Buffalo in the second round thanks to Darius Kasparaitis' goal. And yeah, the Penguins would go on. Well, they lost to the Devils in the conference final. But then in 2005, they ended up getting the number 1 pick, which was Sidney Crosby, because of how shitty they were the previous 10 seasons. And a lot of people said that the Pittsburgh won the draft lottery illegally because, they they wanted Pittsburgh to stay, and they felt that the Penguins were going to move, saying Bettman had something to do with it. Nevertheless, did the kid did his job. Him and Lemieux on the same team, amazing. Of course, Lemieux would soon retire for the second and last time, and Crosby would be Pittsburgh's heart and soul franchise. They won the Stanley Cup in 2009 after losing in 2008 to the Red Wings. So 2009 was great, including that Game 7 when Marc-Andre Fleury made that big stop off Lidstrom with 5 seconds left. Penguins would go on to the Stanley Cup Finals and win in 2016 and 17 against Nashville and San Jose, respectively. And, Crosby, Malkin, Getzel, Marc-Andre Fleury, great Pittsburgh names. So anyway, let's talk about the 1993 Penguins while we're at this. Anyhow, so the 92-93 Pittsburgh Penguins were the best team in the NHL. 56 wins, 119 points. They were the top team in the President's Trophy. 6 players hit 85 points and 8 hit 22 or more goals. And the fact of the matter is Mario Lemieux's great season. Like, the dude had to miss a quarter of the regular season and still won the Hart Ross Trophy. The Penguins decided to do some rebranding. Oddly enough, they were two-time defending champs, and they decided to change their uniforms from the skating penguin to that triangle penguin you see on the screen. And all that. It was kind of weird and all that. They called them the Robo Penguin. And the road uniforms would have Pittsburgh on the front instead of the penguin. Yeah, so anyway, that's what happened. Pittsburgh actually gave up 19 shorthanded goals, which was weird. But they had the shooting percentage. So, and then Mario Lemieux unfortunately had Hodgkin's disease, which is a type of cancer. So he had to go through radiation treatments. He missed 24 regular season games and missed the 93 All-Star game, which was one of the greatest All-Star games of all time. However, Lemieux somehow, in some way, on March 2nd, 1993, came back to score a key goal in Philadelphia, of all places, and Philly gave him a standing ovation, which, Paul Steigerwald and the late Mike Lang said it was shocking in Philadelphia, of all places. Lemieux put on a clinic. He led the league in plus minus with plus 55 and scored 160 points, despite missing 20 plus games. Anyway, he was named the Hart Trophy winner for NHL's MVP. I mean, dude, why wouldn't you? Pittsburgh put up 119 points ahead of Washington, the Islanders, and the Devils, meaning that they would have to face the Devils in the next round. The question on my mind is if the Islanders and Devils both had the same record, who had the 3 seed? But I guess Washington and the Islanders against the Devils head to head. Nevertheless, the Penguins would face the Devils in the first round of the playoffs. What's even more shocking was that Pittsburgh put up not one, not two, not three, but 17 straight wins. I know that overtime wins count at 2, but I mean, to win 17 games, they beat the New York Islanders mark in 1982. But to be fair to the New York Islanders in 1982, that 15 game streak, they didn't have overtime, regular season overtime. Pittsburgh had. So Pittsburgh won, and then they tied the Devils on the last day of the season. So the Penguins, if the 1-8 system would have moved, this was the season before 1-8. Pittsburgh would have played Buffalo, Boston would have played New Jersey, Quebec would have faced the Islanders, and Montreal would have faced Washington. Or it might have been. So anyway, the Devils were struggling and all that. And so they had to face the Penguins. And no, Martin Brodeur was not part of that 93 Devils team, if you're asking. So the Penguins actually won the next 3 games. So the Penguins, like I said in my recap of the Penguins season, of the Penguins franchise, they won 11 straight games at the end of the playoffs. The last 3 against the Rangers, they swept Boston in the conference finals and swept the Blackhawks in the Stanley Cup. Then they won the next 3. So their 14 wins are the record for most consecutive wins in multiple season playoffs. They lost game 4 inexplicably, but still won game 5. So then they had to take on those pesky New York Islanders who shocked the Capitals thanks to what was supposed to be 3 overtime winners by Ray Ferraro, but it ended up being 2 because Brian Mullen was given one by accident. So the Penguins took on the Islanders, lost game one, won the next two, lost game four, won game five, 6-3. So all they had to do was beat the Islanders in New York on Long Island to go on to the Stanley Cup semifinals. Didn't happen. They lost 7-5, and then they lost in game seven. It's worth noting that Darius Kasparov basically hacked Mario Lemieux. His goal was to screw Lemieux over, and it kind of worked. The Islanders had a big 3-1 lead in game seven against the Penguins, but somehow Pittsburgh tied the game at 3. Pittsburgh had a chance on a 2-on-1, but they botched it. And unfortunately, Larry Murphy was caught too. Well, was it him or was it Coffee? One of them was, someone was caught. I think it was Samuelson was caught in a pinch. And the others went 2-on-1. And David Volek, of all fucking people, because he was a terrible skater and all that, scored. And I wouldn't forget Chris Cuthbert's call for CBC. 2-on-1 Volek scores! David Volek Islanders! And there will be a new Stanley Cup champion in 1993. It was just shocking how the Pittsburgh Penguins, with all those wins, couldn't beat a scrappy and cupcake like New York Islanders team. Lemieux did score 18 points in 11 games. Barrasso was the guy in the playoffs, but yeah, he tried. He really tried. So anyway, nevertheless, Lemieux had a lot of things. Tom Barrasso was named second All-Star team. Lemieux was on the first All-Star team, won the plus minus award, won the Hart Trophy for MVP. Art Ross for top scorer. Lester B. Pearson, the MVP, voted by the players, not by the general managers, and the Bill Masterton Trophy for dedication and perseverance in hockey. Well, after all, he came back from cancer. Larry Murphy was named to the second All-Star team himself, and so was Kevin Stevens. Not really a lot of massive moves. At the trade deadline in 93, all they got was Peter Tangolani back from Tampa, and they traded Bob Erie to Buffalo for Mike Ramsey, who was a good defenseman. Phil Bourque was lost to the Rangers in free agency. Gord Dineen to the Senators. They got Tom. They signed Tom Barrasso to a 5-year deal. They re-signed Joe Mullen in late September. Mario got a 7-year, $42 million deal October 92. And Brian Trottier signed in 1993. Well, he missed this season, but Trottier came back. Unfortunately for the Penguins, the 93 season would see Scotty Bowman replaced as head coach by Eddie Johnston, the former Bruins goalie. Bowman would not lose his job for long as he went to the Detroit Red Wings and helped the Red Wings get back to prominence. In the 92 draft, in the first round, well, there were 10 rounds, they picked up Martin Straka, center from Plzeň in Czech Republic. It worked out. Straka proved well, and he was the only major one of note. So, nevertheless, the Pittsburgh Penguins of 92-93 could have done well. So, what would have happened if they did get to the conference finals against the Habitants? We don't put them in the final, but we put them in the next round. What would have happened against Patrick Roy and the Canadians? Let's find out. So, anyhow, the rules were the 93 Habs would take on the 93 Penguins. Because the Penguins had more points, the Penguins would host and have home ice advantage for the conference finals, which is a 2-2-1-1-1 format. So, what would happen if Wall had to take on Lemieux? Now, the funny thing is, Wall and Lemieux both are legends for Montreal and Pittsburgh. But let's not forget that Patrick Wall and Mario Lemieux share something in common. What do they share in common? The fact that their birthdays both are October 5th, 1965. So in 2025, they'll be 60 years old. And the funny thing is, Patrick Roy was born in Quebec City. Of course, Quebec being major rival of the Habs. And Mario Lemieux was born in Montreal. So anyway, Lemieux would have to take on his hometown Canadiens, and Patrick Roy would have to take on Mario Lemieux, the guy who shared his birthday. So this is the starting line would be Dampus, Muller, and Bellows with Desjardins and Schneider. Lemieux, Stevens, and Yager for Pittsburgh, Murphy, and Shell Samuelson. But remember, those are the starting lineups. Game one saw the Penguins win in overtime. Penguins were up 4-1 at one point. Rick Tocchet, Joe Mullen, Mario Lemieux, and Shell Samuelson all scoring. Montreal goals by Gilbert Dion, Kitchener, and Kirk Muller. In the third period, Bellows, Kitchener from Matthew Schneider scored, and then Dampus from Kirk Muller tied it. But in overtime, Even though the Penguins got called for cross-checking, Kevin Stevens put the goal in at 9 minutes from Yager and Lemieux. So after 69 minutes, nice, the Penguins won. They really badly outshot Montreal 60 to 33. Poor Patrice Brisebois, only getting a minute and 28 seconds. But don't worry, Brisebois would be better off. Pittsburgh would give Tangolani, Ramsey, and Dave Tippett, future NHL coach, not too many minutes. Brazil beat Waugh. Lemieux was named the top star. Waugh the second star. Kevin Stevens the third star. Well, I mean, after all, Waugh did face 60 shots and almost won the game. Game 2 would see the Habs come back to win 6-3 to split the first 2 games. Muller scored for Montreal, then Mario Lemieux tied it. Mike Keane shorthanded even though Bells was in the box, made it 2-1. Dumpus made it 3-1. Gary Leeman, the former 50-goal scorer for the Leafs, look it up, made it 4-1. Tocchet scored to make it 4-2. Then J.J. Daniel on the power play made it 5-2. Stevens made it 5-3, but Desjardins scored to make it 6-3. So not much time for Paul DiPietro. 6 seconds on the ice. John LeClair, future Flyers legend, with 49 seconds. But you know Paul DiPietro would do much better. I mean, the dude scored a hat trick against the Nordiques in round 1 in 93, and you only give him 6 seconds? Jake Caulfield would have get 12 seconds. The 3 stars, Kirk Muller, Patrick Watt, and Matthew Schneider. So the series would head back to the Forum, the fabulous Forum, if you will. Sorry, Los Angeles. At the Forum, the Penguins would win 7-4 in Game 3. Tocchet scored. Bellows, Kitchener made it 1-1. Kirk Muller made it 2-1. Desjardins made it 3-1. Stevens made it 3-2. And then John McEachran tied it at 3. And then Pittsburgh went, wow, Sean McEachran, well, Joe Mullen and then Yager scored. And then they decided to give Frederick Chabot some time in net. Kevin Haller made it 5-4. But Kevin Stevens on a 4-on-4 with Shell Samuels and Mike Keane in the box scored to make it 6-4, and Joey Mullen made it 7-4. Dave Tippett 43 seconds, Bruce LaBerge 55 seconds. They didn't even give Paul DiPietro any ice time. I don't know why. So yeah, what was bad in this game? Murphy, Bellows, and Mullen are your 3 stars. Larry Murphy, eh? Leaf fans will not be happy with that. Game 4 sees the Penguins again win 7-5 this time. As Don Poos scored for Montreal first, then Mario Lemieux, then Shell Samuelson made it 2-1. Muller made it 2-2. Gary Leeman made it 3-2. Kevin Stevens made it 3-3. Sean McEachran makes it 4-3. And then Bob Erie, once he scored, Wall was out of the net. Kirk Muller made it 5-4. Then Kevin Stevens made it 6-4. Stevens got ejected for boarding. So Brian Bellows made it 6-5. But then the empty net came on a goal by Lemieux, of all freaking people. 5 points in that game. I went really 24 seconds. Yeah, well, Chabot did okay. Ed Ronan got injured, being boarded by Kevin Stevens. Lemieux, Dompus, and Stevens are your 3 stars. I don't know why you give Kevin Stevens that star and all that. So 3-1, Pittsburgh heads home and lose 4-2. Montreal takes it back to the Forum. Larry Murphy scored to make it 1-0. Alf Samuelson and Paul Stanton both win the box. Brian Bellows, Kitchener, made it 1-1. Mario Roberge comes out of nowhere to score 2-1. Gilbert Dion, Kitchener, made it 3-1. Kevin Stevens makes it 3-2, and then Don Poos made it 4-2, and the game was iced. Jimmy Pack was on that team well. Patrick Waugh, Kevin Stevens, and Vincent Dompoos were named the 3 stars. Waugh coming back to life. Now let's see if Montreal wins on the Forum. The answer is no. A gigantic 7-2 win for Pittsburgh. Bellows made it 1-0. Yager scored to make it 1-1. Lemieux scored twice to make it 3-1. Francis made it 4-1. And then McEachran made it 5-1. Wall was dumped. Mullen made it 6-1. Dompoos made it 6-2. And then Sean McEachran made it 7-2. So, yeah. 4-point night for Ronnie Francis. Francis, Lemieux, and McEachran were your 3 stars. So Pittsburgh would have won in 6 games over Montreal. So now comes the hard part. What about the next matchup? There would be another one. LA. The LA Kings. Now the rule for the Kings and like the Kings Penguins. So it's Lemieux versus Gretzky, a dream matchup that nobody saw in the playoffs. No Lemieux versus Gretzky at all. None. Now here's the factoid. Yeah, Penguins would have had home ice against the Kings. The Kings spent their energy taking down three Canadian teams: Calgary, Vancouver, and Toronto. So then they face Pittsburgh. So it's Gretzky versus Lemieux, Rudy versus Brazo in the net, if you will. So, of course, in every scenario, we leave the other conference alone. So we leave the Western alone and don't put the Leafs in the final, although I would like to. So, anyway, let's go with the playoff. Game one sees the Penguins win in overtime. The Kings actually were up 5-2 after one period. Luke Robitaille's got a hat trick. Marty McSorley and Mike Donnelly made it 5-2. Yager and Murphy. So at 5-2, Ron Francis got in trouble for unsportsmanlike conduct. He was upset that Tangolini got him penalty. Well, Alf Samuelson actually got ejected for charging, and Peter Alhola had to come in to serve the penalty, and Samuelson was gone. Ron Francis got 10-minute misconduct for unsportsmanlike. It was still 5-2, and then they pulled off a rally. Rick Tocchet scored twice, and then Mario Lemieux scored from Stevens. In overtime, Lemieux at 154 scored. Lemieux, Robitaille, and Tocchet are your three stars. And now Samuelson has to learn not to be such a bitch. Game two sees the Penguins win 7-4. It was a tight game. Pittsburgh got 4-2 after one period on goals by Larry Murphy, Jaromir Jagr, Rick Tocchet, and Paul Stanton. Kings goals by Alex Shatnick and Luke Robitaille. Shatnick made it 4-3. Warren Reiko was ejected for slashing, so he was done. Sean McCaffrey made it 5-3, and Rick Nickel had to come in the game for Rudy. Mario Lemieux made it 6-3. Robitaille cut it to 2, but then Stevens made it 7-4, and that was it. The three stars: Lemieux, Yager, and Stevens. So the Penguins were up 2-0 on the Kings. Game 3 saw the Penguins and Kings play a tough one, but it was 7-6. The game was Penguins were up 3-0. Shell Samuelson and then Yager with 2, but Mike Donnelly, Luke Robitaille, and Donnelly made it 3-3. Kevin Stevens made it 4-3. Rick Tocchet made it 5-3. Jimmy Carson made it 5-4 when he was happy and not a malcontent. Yager hat-trick made it 6-4. Luke Robitaille made it 6-5, and Yari Curry made it 6-6. But with 17 seconds left, Yager from Lemieux and Murphy made it 7-6. As well, Mark Barthelin was as Yager, Stevens, and Murphy were the three stars. 3-0. Pittsburgh, uh, LA decides to go with Rob Stauber to try to stop the team. Unfortunately, they didn't, as the Penguins swept the LA Kings aside, winning 6-5. Corey Millen scored for the LA Kings, then Lemieux. LA had a 3-1 lead, 2 goals next. Corey Millen again, and Luke Robitaille. Sean McCaffrey and Rick Tocchet made it 3-3. Lemieux on the power play made it 4-3. After 2 Kings went in the box, McIntyre and McSorley, Joe Mullen made it 5-3. Stauber was replaced by Kelly Rudy. Mike Donnelly made it 5-4. And then, even though the Kings had Thomas Sandstrom be in the box for charging for a double minor, Paul Coffey, Kitchener, scored from Robitaille and Brett Thompson. Yes, Paul Coffey played for the Kitchener Rangers. Look it up. But in overtime, Warren Reichel got ejected for cross-checking, and somehow, in some way, LA did not give up the winning goal. Rob Blake got penalized for charging. In double overtime, Samuelson and Honey went off, and then Mark Potvin for the Kings got off for one play. Robitaille was caught for spearing, and then McSorley for charging, and then Lemieux got a pass, scored on the hat trick, gets a hat trick, and wins 6-5 in triple overtime. So the game took 108 minutes, 49 seconds to complete. Shots were 83-72 for the Penguins. They still only gave Jay Caulfield, Peter Tangolini, Mike Ramsey, and Dave Tippett under 5 minutes. Everyone else got 20 minutes. Larry Murphy got 70 minutes on the ice. And former King Larry Murphy, I must say. Shell Samuelson 64 minutes. Lemieux and Stevens got 51 minutes each. For the Kings, Rob Blake played 70 minutes. Chitnick 56, McSorley 37 to lead the way. Everyone played 10 minutes. Even Guy Lafecque and Brett Thompson only played 10 minutes. So yeah, Rudy was great. One shot out of 47, he gave up after replacing Stauber. Well, they put Stauber in because it's like, what if they do it? Franco got ejected. Barrasso, Corey Millen, and Kelly Rudy were the 3 stars of the game. Yeah, Corey Millen, the second star, even though the game-winning goal was by Lemieux. He had a hat trick. Corey Millen only had 3 points. Lemieux, well, so did Lemieux, I guess. But yeah, the Pittsburgh Penguins would have won the Stanley Cup, taking care of the LA Kings like it was nothing, and Gretzky would not come close. Just saying. Anyway, I'm Jeff Diamond. I do.